Hi guys, welcome back. So it was 2-3 weeks ago I gave a video to share the strategy on Chinese stocks, which is for the short to medium term to buy on bad news and sell on good news. And you have to admit, so far within the last 2-3 weeks, it has been working like a charm. Because you see, bad news for accumulation, good news to sell, bad news to buy, good news to sell. Last week it was delisting notice for Baidu and IQ and Futu. Bad news to buy, and yesterday good news to sell. It was the news about the CCP saying that they would allow these foreign listed companies to disclose the auditing information. And I was skeptical about that, and you can see that so far for the past 3 weeks, buying on bad news and selling on good news had been working pretty well and never even missed once. So if you had followed this strategy, I guess you would be trading this very well. So far, during this time, every time there is good news out, I would express my concern and try to keep everyone cool and calm. And whenever there's bad news out, I would not be too pessimistic at the same time. So far, the market is really mainly playing on news. All the movement is news driven. There is no fundamental or technical analysis that's making sense right now. So I would not treat any news I hear seriously, but only treat it as a trading range. Because if you fall into the news and believe in anything you're hearing, then you are easily dragged or pulled into the mindset that the institutions or the big dogs want you to believe. And I think it might be dangerous. So I would insist to not believe in anything we're hearing, but to focus on our independent thinking based on what we observe. And this is not just for Chinese stocks, but also for the US as well. Last week, Apple announced to reduce 20% of the production capacity for this year because of the short of demand. And yet the market just kept on climbing, ignoring this information. So the rally seems to me very much like a short squeeze to kill all the short positions. And all the shorts has been acting as fuel for the market to move up. And in this case, I feel like it's not very healthy. So right now, I don't even think technical analysis works in a market that's super volatile and news driven. So I really prefer to take a farther distance from everything, take a moment to think, to observe or regroup. Right now, I'm still not convinced. I don't have a good feeling with everything that's going on, and I cannot explain it. It's just a feeling, and I cannot stop anyone from going heavy into the market just because I have a feeling, right? So all I can suggest is to try to mute yourself from the news, good and bad news that's flying around every day. Stop all the noises and focus on what you try to see underneath the surface. So be a little bit more careful, okay? I'm not trying to be either bullish or bearish here. I'm just trying to balance the thinking and try to give a second thought after everything. So when I try to express the potential of a market or certain companies, some people would claim I am paid by the Chinese government or paid by the companies to pump and dump. On the other hand, when I try to express my concerns of some issues or subjects, then other people would claim I'm shorting the stocks. So sometimes it's very hard for me to express anything, or it's very difficult to satisfy everyone. So I'm just gonna ignore the noises and just focus on expressing what I want to say. So last week, because of the good news or progress of the Russia and Ukraine, the chip sector had a very, very strong recovery, very strong run-up. Basically, I think right after Apple and Tesla, it should be Nvidia that's the strongest one, right? To kind of pull up the whole Nasdaq, the whole index, especially with the news of the progress of the negotiation between the two countries. It should help solve the problem of this supply chain issue for the chip. But the problem is Nvidia was the one that's basically pulling up the whole chip sector, while you can see in comparison, AMD was a lot more weak, even though it should be the second leader. And also TSM had not benefited from the strong rebound of the chip sector at all, but mainly go sideways and slightly drop. So this to me feels like the institutions or the Wall Street is mainly pulling up the leaders, the giants, to pull up the index, like Nvidia, Apple, and Tesla, to pull up NASDAQ and the chip sector. And for me, I personally think the biggest bad news for the chip sector is not even the war that's going on, but the risk of reducing demand in the coming 1 to 3 years. Because last year in 2021, the whole year it was about supply chain issue, the chip shortage. And at some point, the problem of the chip shortage would peak. And that means the demand would peak or the supply issue would hit the bottom. And this is when the chip sector should turn around, because it had been so much hyped up last year, or ever since COVID. If we take a look, it hit the bottom in March, and so far the market had many corrections, but it has been only running up. First, it's the COVID that makes the strong demand for electronics, because everyone needed to buy more computers or upgrade their phone to 5G. And then it's the boom of the EV and the supply chain issue that created the big problem of the chip shortage. And also the war between China and US to fight for the chip. I think all of these have been hyping up the chip sector. I know it's the future, but in the medium term, it has hyped up too much. So the biggest risk is the peak of demand. So when I saw Apple was reducing their production, I was pretty sure that Apple is not the only one that would do that. So maybe we did see the peak of demand and the new Scott Berry in the strong rally. So last week I thought it was a good hedge idea to short the chip sector for the short term, and because it has been running non-stop, and you can see that in the recent days it had a pretty hard correction. Even if we bought in yesterday, you can still see the SOXS, the short for the chip sector, had gone up near 15%. So today I want to talk about the real estate market. Again, I'm just sharing my personal views. So you know how people say the two biggest bubbles in the whole world are the Chinese real estate market and the US stock market. So today I want to elaborate more on the real estate problem, because a lot of people might be worried about how the bubble would burst. So far we have been seeing the problem with Evergrande. We've talked about it a lot last year, but here's more to the story. So I think the two biggest problems for the Chinese real estate market is debt and demand. Before, we talked a lot about the debt issue, which is, for example, what Evergrande was experiencing, which represents a lot of the developers in China to over-leverage in the past decades. That lead to giant default problem and might have potential possibility of bankruptcy. So this time, let's talk about the demand instead, because debt and demand are the biggest problems. But I've heard less people talk about the demand, which we can observe. Let's make an example. So let's say a couple fall in love, and the first thing they do after they get married is to buy a property, right? In the past decades, this was the main boost for the real estate market, the continual rising demand for real estate, because the prerequisite to get married is to have a property, and then they're gonna have a kid, and when their kid get married, they would also get a property. So this is the tradition that supports the real estate market for a long, long time. And now the problem comes ever since the one-child policy. Right now it's coming for the second to third generation of the one-child policy. So that means this child is getting married to another child of someone that only gave birth to also one child. Both people in this couple were the single child, and when they give birth to more than likely also one child for the next generation, so that means you have 4 parents and 8 grandparents taking care of one couple that are both the single child, and each of the couple had one property before. So that means in the future, for this third generation, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties in total to pass on to this new young couple. Let's say they take one property to live in, they will still have 5 properties to sell or to rent. And in this case, you can imagine the demand in the future would be significantly reduced. So are we going to have a bigger problem with the real estate? Are we going to see more bankruptcy? If I need to have a bold prediction on this, I think it's not impossible to see 9 out of 10 real estate developers to go out of business in the next coming decade. But I don't think this is the problem that we're gonna have right away and all at once, because it might take years to happen, and I think China would not let the bubble burst all at once. I've explained it before. I think they will poke a very small hole in the balloon and let the air out slowly and try to deleverage slowly to deal with this problem. But even so, we have to keep in mind that there might be a second wave of default problem coming, and I don't know when. So if you are long in Chinese stocks, you need to keep that in mind. And also, I don't suggest to go heavy all at once, but if you're bullish, set up targets to buy slowly, average up or average down. I think that would be safer and smarter choice. And no, I'm not shorting Chinese stocks this moment. If I am, I would let you know. I closed the Baidu short position this morning also. And this is something to keep in mind in the back of the head, not some information to make a rush decision, because again, we don't know when it will happen. Now that's it for today, and if you have enjoyed this video, please give me a big like and write me a great comment, and I'll see you in my next video. That's it guys, hope you can find my videos helpful. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and give me a big like. Thank you.